Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. So today is the return of one of my favorite elements of PvE, that is a challenge tournament, specifically the Dark Elves versus the Fire Knight's Castle. Now, it's definitely been some time since we've had a challenge tournament in general, but also it's been a while since we've had one that is offering up some Prism Jewels, i.e. some of the equivalent of a summon pool, but for souls, so you have a chance to get some pretty decent souls for all of the Ninja Turtle collaboration champions. So although it's not live just yet for some odd reason, but the Heroic Summon Pool event will be starting tomorrow, at least at the time of this recording. And so you have a chance to get some souls for April, Donatello, Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Shredder. Now, of course, a lot of these have already, if not all of them, I believe, have been offered up or given out for free. So depending on how many you've collected already, you might just get a duplicate of one that you already have, or it might be a lower star rating than the one you already have. So this could end up being that not that useful, or it could end up being a game changer depending on who you happen to get. But if my memory serves, Leonardo obviously was coinciding with his Heroes Path event. Raphael and April O'Neil had their souls up for grabs in a different Heroes Path event. Donatello was from a Titan event. Michelangelo was just given out for free with his Champion Chase event. And then Shredder, I believe, was from a Champion Chase. He had to win first place, something like that, and you can get up to the 5-star soul. So yeah, that's all 6 of them up for grabs. And yeah, you might be able to get lucky with one of them, maybe the one you need. In my case, like getting a 5-star, 4-star, whatever Leonardo soul would be useful, especially since I didn't go for it in his Heroes Path, but the rest of them wouldn't be as useful for me. So if we take a look at the tournament itself, we can see the challenge here, Fire Knight's tournament, with only champions using the faction Dark Elves. And you can see here the pretty standard amount for winning, or for the highest milestone of a tournament, 2,100 points over the course of 2 days. So it's going to take a decent amount of effort in order to crank it out in 2 days, but it's not a crazy amount of effort. Plus, there's not really anything else going on right now in the game that should require a massive amount of energy, just aside from just, playing the game. But these 40 Prism Jewels will grant you one, air quotes, free summon towards that heroic soul summoning pool, again, towards all the champion souls that we described. But I always like to point out that if you do happen to win this tournament, if a lot of people aren't participating in your group, be sure to check it out just to make sure that is the case. Then you do have a chance to get some 6-star Relentless gear, which can also always be useful. And if you care, you can also get some of the relic fragments for the event relics. Now, as we'll see shortly, there is a pretty common champion that is the queen of this particular dungeon in this faction. So it might be pretty tough to find a dead group, but nonetheless, be sure to check your group just to see how active the people are in your group. So you can see in my group here, we have a couple people that are kind of out ahead. You see I have myself making a decent amount of progress. I am going to be going at least all the way out there to 2,100. But yeah, you can see below that, pretty much barely any participation. A couple people have done a handful of runs, and a lot of people are sitting there at 0. Popping over to the dungeon itself, let's talk about the best stages to farm, starting with the difference between normal and hard mode. I definitely recommend for any challenge tournament, don't even think about doing this on hard mode, but particularly when it's one faction in particular, there's not that many freeze champions up for grabs or up for use in this particular faction, so you'd really struggle, or you'd struggle a lot to keep the shield down and or try to, using freezes to effectively be turn meter control. You're much better off running on normal mode, where you have a decent amount of champions who have some turn meter suppression in their kits. So with that in mind, stage 25 offers you the best gear quality for normal mode. Stage 20 offers you the most efficient stage in terms of points per energy spent, meaning that you just get the most bang for your buck whilst also still getting 5 to 6-star gear. And then if you're just kind of struggling with Fire Knight, because it can be a pretty tough dungeon, especially when you're locked to one particular faction, then stage 16 can also work because it is Void Affinity and it's just typically much easier to do whilst also maintaining a chance to get 6-star gear. For this video in particular, I put together a couple of teams, one that's more of like, the mid-game accessible version, and then the team that I'm going to be running. So we have a team for stage 20, and then a team for stage 25. Let's start with the more budget-friendly team on stage 20. So we have Spider in the mix. He's our debuffer for the squad. This is for people who don't have Lydia yet. Obviously, she is a Dark Elf and one of the best, if not the best, debuffers in the game. We have Visix, who you get just by playing the game long enough, and she's going to be one of our turn meter suppression champions. We have Cold Heart, of course, quad hitter on the A1, hero reduction on the A1 as well, and then the massive turn meter drop, as well as the enemy max HP slam that is the Heart Seeker. We have Mithrala in the mix primarily because she can give us increased attack for our nuker to deal with the waves, but also she can be a cleanser if you need to, or you're taking debuffs from the enemy waves. And then a nuker. This could be anyone who you happen to have who fits the description in the Dark Elves. In this case, we're going to be using someone that you're more likely to have on your account, which is Dirandil, but of course, any nuker in the faction will work. Let's go ahead and see this team in action. It's pretty straightforward from the description of the team composition, but we come come in here, we do some debuffs. Hex obviously spreads a little bit of damage. We debuff them. We have increased attack now, and Darendil is our primary nuker, and he can kill one person. He's not built, crazy good. I didn't put a bunch of crazy savage gear on him. He isn't savage, but he doesn't have like amazing gear on. But we'll take a look at the gear later, of course. But pretty straightforward as far as getting through the waves. You'll note that I did not set Visix to use her provoke on wave 1. I saved it for wave 2 because wave 1, as you can tell, we pretty much not 100, not easily, but we did a lot of damage to the waves, and so it's a little bit less concerning about them taking a turn before dying. So once again, rinse and repeat. We come through and we do more damage to the waves, and slowly but surely we will work our way through the waves and move on to the boss. So this takes about a minute or so. Like I said, Darendil is not like crazy built on my account, so he's not just going to one-shot each of the waves in one go. But he can do a decent amount of damage. He's a decent nuker. He has good multipliers for an epic champion. But yeah, just over a minute or so is how long it takes to get through wave 1. Then moving on to the Fire Knight himself. This is where we definitely want to set you definitely want to set up your AI overrides to start everyone off with their A1s. And in this case, Visix gets to break the shield. Darendil, if she didn't, would also break it with his A1. And after that, then we can start doing our debuffs and can start controlling the turn meter. Now, of course, one thing to note here is that when you're doing stage 20 and below, the enemy max HP damage is not capped. That's why Cold Heart did like 500,000 damage, which is well over 10%. That is capped for the further stages 21 and beyond. And we also get the full extent of the turn meter drop from that because we are doing stage 20 and below. So that also makes it a lot easier to specifically run the Fire Knight's castle, as you can see there. Yeah, big 500,000 slams and a full turn meter reduction. And by contrast, we'll see when we run the stage 25 team that it's a lot less in terms, or I guess it's half the turn meter control, and then enemy max HP damage is capped. For the stage 25 version of the team, we basically have the same core concept, except that we're upgrading the champion. So Lydia is now our debuffer. Ruled Huntmaster is now our DPS for the waves and replacing Darendil. We have double Cold Heart, so we have double the turn meter suppression, again to counteract the fact that with stage 25, turn meter decreased effects are reduced by 50%. And then we still have Visix in there for the same role for the provoking, as well as the turn meter control on her A1, and notably the decreased speed on her A2. So let's go ahead and see this team in action as well. And I do have to apologize. I am coming down with a cold, I believe, at least based on my normal symptom cycle. But yeah, so if I'm taking breaths and pauses here, that's because my nasal passages are slowly closing over time, but I digress here. So Real does a lot of damage here to wave 1. He's not strong enough on my account, at least without the increased attack, to kill them in one shot. That would have been pretty cool. But nonetheless, he does a lot of damage, akin to Darendil doing the damage for the stage 20 version of the team. And eventually, we just kind of DPS them down. It takes around 30-ish seconds for each wave. And then we basically come back again and do it again for the wave 2. Now, in this case, I am abusing the fact that he does do bonus damage or gets the extra hit when enemies aren't under hex, as you saw there. And so I do actually want to use his A3 for the purposes of placing it out there. And you might have noticed that Visix sometimes places hex as well. We'll look through the builds a bit later, but she does have a curse set on, and so she has a chance to place the hex as well. But yeah, just over a minute or so, once we get back to Rule's AoE, which is one turn away, we should be able to kill these two Vrasks here and move on to the boss. And you can see there that with the decreased speed from Visix, we are pretty much able to fully lap them by the time they take their turn. She's ready to re-provoke them once again, so it's pretty consistent CC from her. Once again, everyone's starting off with their A1s, and the double Cold Heart definitely helps. That's 8 hits across both of them. We start off with the Heartseekers, we get decreased speed out there, and basically from here on out, the Fire Knight's turn meter will practically never get above 50% as long as we continue. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the composition. And as we saw there, the enemy max HP is now capped to the 10%, so that's the 200 and something thousand number you're going to be seeing. So and now it's just a matter of time with the cooldowns. It's going to take them a while because the Heartseeker, of course, is on a 4-turn cooldown naturally. So it's just going to take a couple of iterations of them. I think maybe 5 Heartseekers is what it ends up taking in order to fully kill the boss, and then on top of however much damage Ruled Huntmaster tends to do with his big AoE there. So a couple, 80,000 hits, but Heartseeker obviously is the hard carry for the team in terms of the damage. So we just keep cycling through our abilities here, and I think on average the team's been getting this stage done in around 2.5 minutes, but it depends on RNG there. As you can see, decreased cooldown on one of the cold hearts. She is in a reflex set, so that we're at the mercy of RNG as far as how fast we can get back around to nuking the boss. So yeah, just basically right on 2.5 minutes in order to get this done on stage 25. Now, as promised, let's take a quick look at the builds on the champion featured on the Steam, starting off with the mostly epic or more accessible team for stage 20. So Darendil is built in a Savage set, but it's not some crazy build. You can see lots of 5-star gear in the mix here, so it's not like he's one of my best nukers or one of my best gear sets or anything like that. And it's worth noting that me being an endgame player, a lot of my epics are going to be empowered, and some of them will have blessings as well. That's not really necessary for the success rate of the run. That would just enable your team to run it faster because they're going to be able to do more damage. So on my Darendil, who is +2, notably empowered, but total stats here: 36,000 on the HP, 4,800 on the attack, 218 on the speed, full crit rate 247 on the crit damage. So nothing crazy there, 250-ish. And then he does not have a relic. He is booked, of course, because he's an epic. He does have Crushing Grand, but it's only 3 stars. So like the first, I think, 2 hits, the first hit ignores some defense, but it doesn't carry over to every hit like a 6-star Crushing Grand. That would be ideal, of course. And then, of course, no masteries because he is kind of a niche use champion, Curse City, Faction Wars, that type of stuff, and or challenge tournaments like this one. So that is why he's built. And yeah, moving on. We have a Spider, our accessible air quotes debuffer here, just in perception gear. He just has a smattering of crap on, more or less. Not gonna lie to you guys, but 71,000 on the HP, 2,500 on the defense, 275 on the speed. So I did build him relatively fast because he just doesn't need that much stats, just speed and accuracy, and then survivability a little bit. Don't care about his damage, and then 358 on the accuracy. For stage 20 and 25, you need about 200 accuracy. Maybe you can go up to like 250 just to be on the safer side. But the stat requirements are quite low when it comes to beating the normal mode of dungeons. Just like with Darendil, there is no relic on. He is booked because he's an epic. He does have relatively long cooldowns. He has cruelty instead, so when he does his AoE attack on the A2 for the chance and decrease attack, we can get a little bit of bonus from cruelty, but again, not that useful. And then same logic, no masteries on him. He's not one of my most important champions. He's just thrown into these types of situations, Curse City, etc. Next up, we have my Mithrala, who I don't use as much anymore in the arena, but nonetheless, she is still built for the arena, so she is in Perception and Untouchable, my kind of anti-bomb, high accuracy / resistance build with triple reaction as well. But on her, 73,000 on the HP, 5k on the defense, 290 on the speed, and then 794 on the accuracy, 300 on the resistance. So effectively, 1,100 resistance given her passive. So she's definitely up there. No one can debuff her outside of 3% resist. In terms of a relic, I do have one on her where she gets some turn meter whenever an ally gets some CC on them, which of course benefits her as a cleanser, so she can potentially cut in and cleanse them off as need be, but nothing crazy there. I think it's only an epic relic. In terms of she is fully booked, I have Temporal Chains on her. I got her soul from her Titan event forever ago, but again, kind of synergizing with the potential to cut in and cleanse off debuffs from allies. And then for the masteries, definitely optimized for her particular skill set. Eagle Eye being the most effective way to get accuracy and resistance out of her because it double counts in terms of her passive. We want Master Hexer for the debuffs that she places out there, Lore Steel for the speed, accuracy here, lots of the accuracy stuff, turn meters boosting, accuracy boosting, all that kind of stuff. And then we have the sickle shape, I'll call it, on the defense tree, but more resistance, a little bit of healing, solidarity. She places a lot of buffs, so you get more resistance on herself, but also your team. And then you definitely want Cycler Event for the turn meter, and Retribution for the potential counterattacks. Poisons on the A1 can be handy. Next up, we have Cold Heart number 2. This is my Scarab King specialist Cold Heart here, who is in a Destroy set specifically for that purpose. Her total stats are as follows: 44,000 on the HP, 3,000 on the attack, 230 on the speed, 70% crit rate, because that's all we need to maximize the efficiency of the Heartseeker, and then 278 on the crit damage, and 350 on the accuracy. Again, targeting what you would need for Doom Tower Hard, which is where I use her, so 350 accuracy is perfect for that. On her, no relic. On her, she is booked, of course. I run her in Hero Soul just because there's not much that you can do in terms of a blessing here that benefits her into the Scarab King, but and sometimes I do have to use her for challenge tournaments like this one, and specifically in Spider when there's a lot of minions, and so she just does more damage with the Heartseeker. So that is the logic behind the Hero Soul. And then for the masteries, optimized around her being an enemy max HP champion, so we have Flawless Execution for the extra 20% crit damage, even though it is capped, so you might want to switch off of that depending upon your specific use case. But like I said, this is typically my flex Cold Heart, and so she's usually just for Scarab King or for specific challenge tournaments where I'm less likely to run into the enemy max HP cap. And we'll see the differences in the masteries between the Cold Hearts in a second here. But yeah, Cycle of Revenge, chance to decrease the cooldown of Heartseeker, and then a bunch of the standard stuff in terms of accuracy boosting on the support tree and more damage on the offense tree. Speaking of Cold Heart, number 1, let's hop over to her. She is in a reflex set with some perception as well. Pretty similar stats, 41,000 on the HP, 3k on the attack, 252 on the speed, a little bit faster, but this is more optimized for Dark Fae, so she's a little bit better built. Same thing, same logic with the crit rate, 246% on the crit damage and 400 on the accuracy. A little bit overkill, but nonetheless, she is built again for Doom Tower hard. Bosses 350 plus is what you would want for that. No Relic, once again, she is fully booked, and this time I'm running Phantom Touch on her specifically because I do use her as much as possible in other iterations of Fire Knight in the Cursed City where applicable, and other things like that, where it just benefits her because she has the quad hitter, of course, on the A1, and that's a really, really high chance to inflict that bonus damage, which is another pip into Fire Knight Shield, for example, stuff like that. So that is why this one's optimized, but also just more damage. She's built for damage in general. Phantom Touch kills off attack, and then, you know, again, using her into like Dark Fae, for example, it's just more damage. You kill the boss faster, she's less likely to take a turn, etc., and that kind of works out in that favor. And apparently I was wrong on the masteries. I thought I had changed her at some point to Giant Slayer, but that's probably what would make more sense for this. Again, my utility Cold Heart optimized more so for reducing the cooldowns, hence the reflex set. But Giant Slayer probably makes more sense on her versus Flawless Execution, because every instance where I use this Cold Heart, she's going to be dealing with the enemy max HP cap, and she has more than enough crit damage to do that, assuming there's some debuffs out there on whatever boss she's going against. So I probably keep everything the same, but just end on Giant Slayer instead, so that when she uses her A1, we have a decent amount of chances to land the bonus damage scaling with enemy max HP. Next up, we have my Lydia, who has been re-optimized for many, many different pieces of content over the years, but currently she is optimized around Ultra Nightmare Chimera. So she's in a 6-piece protection set with perception as well, so she can protect her debuffs. Ideally, if I had my say, I'd build her in 9-piece Feral, but I don't have the gear yet to do that. And I'd also need to maintain her current level of stats and speed, as we'll see here shortly. But 67,000 on the HP, 4k on the defense, 293 on the speed, 460 resistance, 481 on the accuracy. So for the high resistance is because I also use her in a lot of Doom Tower bosses as the primary debuffer, and she can't really do her job if she's frozen by the Frost Spider or she's provoked by the Magma Dragon, etc. So I just want her to resist things in Doom Tower hard wherever I use her. But also she has enough accuracy now to deal with Ultra Nightmare Chimera, which I believe the threshold is like 475-ish plus accuracy to land your debuffs there, so she's just above that threshold. So if I can redo these stats in 9-piece Feral whenever I can get that set going, she would get the bonus damage for the 2 debuffs, or the multiple debuffs that she places out there, but in her kit. I currently have no Relic on her either. She is booked though, and I do have 1-star Brimstone. Hopefully that I get that to be higher at some point in the future, but for now 1-star Brimstone is all I have. And then for the masteries, in order to get all of the stats that we just talked about, unfortunately I can't go down the War Master route, even though she is primarily a PvE champion at this point. So I had to go down to Eagle-Eyed to get that accuracy, just to make sure that, again, that I can land my debuffs up into the difficulties of Chimera that I needed to deal with. Along the way, we're getting a lot of the accuracy and stat boosting stuff. And then for the defense tree, it's kind of a mix of like arena-ish, even though I don't use her much for that anymore. But you know, some counterattacking, which is helpful, specifically in the Ram form of Chimera. You can counterattack, put the fear out there, to help prevent your allies from murdering themselves, and then just a bunch of the kind of survivability stuff here from the defense tree. Next up, we have Visix the Unbowed, who I mentioned before was in a curse set. This was part of the Hydra showcase I did forever ago now. You can check that out if you'd like to, but just kind of getting started with Hydra, kind of your first teams. But running her in curse just makes her your Hex champion for that squad without having to have a dedicated Hex champion, on top of being the Provoker for the Head of Decay and the Decreased Speed champion overall for your squad. So that is why she's in curse still, because I haven't really had a reason to change her from that build from that showcase. You can see the gear's not fully maxed out, but I digress. In terms of total stats here, 51,000 on the HP, 3,500 on the defense, 248 on the speed, and then 350 on the accuracy. Again, that same threshold, 250 is what you would need for normal mode dungeons, but I have her just in case I need a user in like the Cursed City. She has a little bit higher accuracy. Same role there though as the CC champion Provoker. Now relic on her, she is fully booked. We have 1-star cruelty on her because she has a couple of AoEs, so she just helps lower their defense a little bit. And then for the masteries, definitely optimized around PvE. So the offense tree, making the shortest path all the way down to War Master for the extra damage and against bosses. And then making our way down the support tree, picking up a lot of the debuff boosting turn meter stuff, accuracy stuff, floor still for the stats, Master Hexer to extend the decreased speed. So specifically, if you do build her in a curse set, you can opt for going for sniper as well to increase the chance of placing the hex. But I put her in that set after I'd done the masteries, and before that, there was no reason to pick up sniper because all the debuffs and effects that she can do have a 100% chance of landing, so it didn't really make sense way back in the day, and I just haven't felt the need to get sniper masteries. Sort of burning energy in Minotaur, not a really high priority. Last but not least, we have my Rule the Hunt Master in his lovely 6-star awakened state, which I got lucky with from a random soulstone pull, but he is in a lethal set with some crit rate, or with the crit rate set, as well as a 1 piece of feral for the extra stats here. So he's in a very unique build, shall I say. It's kind of optimized around faction wars. That's kind of the logic, at least, that went into it. But really squishy champion, I must admit, but 40,000-ish on the HP, 6,000 on the attack, 239 on the speed, full crit rate, 252 on the crit damage, high resistance, and then relatively high accuracy. So the logic behind the relatively high resistance is that I didn't want him to get CC'd when I'm running him in faction wars while maintaining his damage capabilities, and also he brings increased accuracy on the entire team, so you don't necessarily need to have high accuracy or highest accuracy because he can kind of buff it to the appropriate level. But yeah, obviously the 6-star blessing, I'm basically taking advantage of the fact that we're getting a lot of extra resistance and accuracy from the blessing, and so I could just pad the stats and just have him not be CC'd when I'm running him as one of my DPSs in faction wars. Just like most of the folks, he does not have a relic on. He is fully booked, and he does have 6-star crushing range, as we talked about before. And then for the masteries, they are partially done. I did the tier 1, tier 2 just to get a little bit of extra damage out of him. But yeah, if I had to, complete it, I'd definitely go down to Helm Smasher. Of course, he is a nuker. And then I'd probably start picking up some of the accuracy stuff and extra stats like Lore Steel, Sniper, Master Hexer, the whole shebang. Pretty standard debuff for masteries. In terms of the other champions that you could use from the Dark Elf faction to help you out in specifically the Fire Knight, there's not that many that are like super optimized for it, but there are nonetheless some ones that are worth highlighting, some of which we've already seen from our team. So let's start off with turn meter control. We covered the main ones, that being Visix the Unbowed and Cold Heart, the ones that you're most likely to have. But if you're fortunate enough to have Blind Seer, technically on her A1, she does have a 100% chance of decreasing the turn meter of enemies by 10%, and it's a 3-hitter at random, so it's another triple hitter, and so basically that's just 30% turn meter reduction every time she takes an A1. But also she's a reviver in case your champions happen to get low or die, if they happen to die. And then if she's also a healer with block debuffs and a shield, so she's a pretty solid champion, particularly after the relatively recent buff. But if all else fails, she can just be an A1 bot to spam the A1 into the shield and the Fire Knight, and just to keep his turn meter suppressed. In terms of debuffers, we talked about Lydia and Spider, but Ghostborn comes into the mix as well. The irresistible decreased defense means that he's extremely consistent as far as debuffing the waves. And then of course you could also run Madame Saris, who has it on a 4-turn cooldown, decreased defense and decreased attack. But I think Lydia is definitely better. If Lydia and or Spider are better, just because you add in the weaken, if you have access to either or both of those. In terms of general helpful supports, one thing, of course, you can run ally attack into the shield, but if you run your champions relatively fast, i.e. like 230 plus speed, they're going to take 2 turns for every turn the boss would have taken. So it's not that you need to necessarily have ally attack in order to, as we saw, we didn't have to worry about ally attack, counterattack at all. We just took enough turns and got enough hits, and it was kind of pretty smooth sailing from there. But if your champions happen to be, not as well built or not as fast, and you do need some help breaking the shield, then, and you happen to have Lanicus as well, then she can help break the shield with the ally attack. Of course, you combine that with strong A1s that are multi-hitting as well. We talked about Mithral and her benefits in terms of some epics. Caden, if you need, again, if your team is dying, you need to revive them, he can work as well. Rian the Conjurer, another reviver for the squad. And then Sylar as well. AoE here on the A1. You can run her in a stun set, turn meter decrease here by 40%, as well as decrease speed. Again, if you don't, and maybe you haven't gotten Visix yet, you haven't played for long enough, but you do have a Sylar, you can run her as kind of the secondary turn meter suppression and decrease speed champion. And then another AoE here, again, stun set, works really well. And then I'll give an honorable mention to Painkeeper. Of course, it's the mini reset champion who most people have at some point or build at some point on their account. It's not perfect, it's only one turn, but nonetheless that could be enough to reset some sort of team to nuke through the waves and then set you up quicker to get to the boss. All right, so that's going to do it for my free-to-play strategy for dealing with the Dark Elves only Fire Knight tournament. Let me know in the comment section down below, do you plan to participate in this challenge tournament? Do you think it's worth it to go for the chance at the souls from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle collaboration? And of course, let me know the team you're going to be running if you do decide to go for this. Be sure to check your group to see how active or inactive it is, and hopefully you do get an easy group. That way you have a chance to get yourself some 6-star Relentless gear. As always, if you did find this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below. It really does help out the channel, and feel free to hit the subscribe button down below as well, if and only if you're enjoying the content overall on the channel for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching and have a good one.